It was the largest, longest, and most expensive deployment of Canadian troops since the Second World War. The price tag was more than $18 billion, but the most important cost was to our troops. More than 40,000 Canadians served in Afghanistan, and 165 Canadians died there. The attacks on September 11th, 2001 sparked America's war on terror, and Canada joined in on the fight. Canada sent elite JTF-2 forces in first in October of that year. Contingents of Canadian regular troops would follow that winter. Our forces fought alongside their American counterparts, but the physical and mental toll was high, and many Canadian veterans continue to struggle after returning home, including those who have lost their lives to suicide. Canadian soldiers were in heavy rotation for more than 12 years in Afghanistan, including retired Master Corporal Gordon Hurley. Even after being injured in Afghanistan by an improvised explosive device, he was back on the battlefield 3 weeks after surgery. Gordon, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Mercedes.
You're a humble guy, but you're a pretty incredible guy. Can you start by sharing a little bit with us about what your time in Afghanistan was like?
Absolutely. So I deployed to Afghanistan in the summer of 2008, and that was a little over a year after joining the military. So from basic training to Afghanistan was about 15 months, and to go over as a no-hook private, not really understanding the geopolitical impacts or the reasoning. It was more just watch your arcs and keep your mouth shut. So it was a very interesting deployment to be able to do something like that at the beginning of a 15-year career, and a very impactful experience to have.
You're out now, you're a graphic designer, and you've put together this incredible display about Afghanistan that you've really grown from the grassroots. Can you tell us why you wanted to put on this display around Remembrance Day about Afghanistan and how this all came together?
2 years ago, I went to a Remembrance Day ceremony, and there wasn't a wreath laid for Afghanistan. The following year, last year, I went to go inquire about laying a wreath, about, hey, was there, I thought I heard, or I thought I didn't hear a wreath getting laid for Afghanistan. I just wanted to clarify about that, and they dead straight said, yeah, no one bought one. And I was left saying, okay, how do we get one? And I was directed to the stand where I could purchase one for $65. So very impactful to be a injured combat veteran, fought for Canada for a long time, and to have to buy my own wreath on behalf of Afghanistan was quite upsetting. It really, it's very strange. We're at a very strange time in Canada, and I think there's a very strange dichotomy that's happening with society and our military, as reflected with our NATO to GDP contributions and just the overall public knowledge of not only the Afghanistan conflict, but the military itself. So I found it necessary, maybe mostly based on an anger, to be honest with you, but then I've seen the impact that doing something like this, grassroots initiative, raising the money myself, reaching out to local leaders, connecting people, bringing them together, showing them, hey, we do have a community. And just because it wasn't there before doesn't mean we can't have it now. And instead of complaining about it, I wanted to do something about it. So this was a perfect way for me to maybe come to terms with Canada's perspective on our military and our soldiers, and do a little healing through it.
What kind of reaction have you gotten from this exhibit you've put together?
It's been amazing. It's really been amazing. As much as I complain and say it's out of anger, the conversations I've had with people, the conversations with the families of fallen soldiers who've come in and looked at the exhibit, very touching, very, very, very touching. And my definition of success was met immediately with the first email I got from a fallen soldier's family about putting it on. So it's worth it.
Gordon, you yourself are injured and you work a lot in the mental health space, I know, with veterans as well. I think as a society are more familiar with PTSD, but perhaps less familiar with things like traumatic brain injuries, blast injuries that have been sustained. Now people are talking about toxic burn pits. A lot of the troops like you who were deployed had to burn garbage. You're inhaling all of these chemicals. When you look at the situation for veterans right now in Canada, what are your sort of top 3 concerns of things that need to be addressed to take care of our veterans?
I think that there's room within the medical establishment for different treatment of post-traumatic stress. And just like you said, toxic exposure, we have blast injuries. All of these injuries and all of these exposures mimic the same signs and symptoms of post-traumatic stress when we're not actually addressing the physiological problem that's happening within a soldier getting exposed to these kinds of things. And instead, we're just saying, hey, this is post-traumatic stress. It meets the DSM-5 manual for it, and let's give them prescriptions or let's go down this method of treatment. Western treatment is completely fine. There's nothing wrong with prescription drugs or SSRIs. Whatever's going to work to get that person off the ledge is worth it. But there are other treatment options, such as a stellate ganglion block. We have psychedelics, so the use of ketamine-assisted therapy. You're seeing a movement towards psychedelic-assisted therapy using psilocybin in Canada through the Special Access Pass. And I really think we're in a unique position as a country with such a liberal, and not a bad way, a liberal view on healthcare and life, that we should be able to be a world leader in providing alternative therapies. If we're so open in many other facets, then I think that we should be doing the same thing with our veterans. And just how you can send us to war, and majority of the time we're saying send me, we can do the same thing with these types of treatments.
I hear a lot about MDMA, psychedelics, psilocybin, as you said, I'm probably mispronouncing that, but mushrooms, veterans wanting to see clinical trials, wanting this to be something that they have access to. Can you explain a little bit to our viewers about your personal experience, how those things work?
Yeah, so myself, I've gone down to Mexico, to Tijuana. Fortunately, I have to travel outside of the country to get this type of treatment. And the 2 gentlemen that run this clinic are both Canadian, and they both are working on Hastings Street for over 10, 15 years doing opioid withdrawal and addiction recovery using the psychedelic called ibogaine. All psychedelics have a certain power, neurophysiologically, what's happening inside your brain. Things are changing. You're able to get a breath of relief from whatever trauma is bothering you or addictions. And then that's over to the veteran to really take control of themselves and institute healthy practice. But to get that initial, like I said, breath and that initial pause where they don't have the cravings for the addiction, or they don't have the ongoing, best word, annoyances of trauma, of post-traumatic stress, of perhaps being too freaked out to go into public spaces or noises and all these other detriments to the soldiers, to the veterans' life that we could be fixing with different types of treatment. I know we're focusing on psychedelics, but there is an amazing treatment called a stellate ganglion block, and it's a block that's put in between your C6 and C7 in your neck, and it basically resets your nervous system. And it's been used for over 100 years. All sorts of treatment for menopause, for head injuries, a varied amount. And about 10 years ago, an American doctor started using it on their Special Forces soldiers and seen great success. So stellate ganglion block, ketamine-assisted therapy, both of these things are covered by Veterans Affairs. But interestingly enough, the assisted therapy part is not. So you have Veterans Affairs saying, yes, we will support this and pay for it, but they won't pay for the assisted therapy portion, which is in the title of psychedelic assisted therapy.
And so what part does that mean, Gordo? Is that the actual therapist working with you, the doctor working with you as you integrate those medications?
Absolutely. The doctor is going to have specific training to deal with psychedelics and how that integrates into a person's life. And we're so new to it. So it's not anyone's fault, but we should really be ahead of the curve of this.
Yeah, it seems odd that they would pay for the medication but not for the doctor. Well, it's certainly something we're going to continue to follow. I know it's a big point of discussion in the veterans community. Thank you so much for your service and for joining us to talk about the state of the veteran community and this beautiful exhibit you've put together.
Thank you so much, Mercedes.